Returning to line 6, number 3, discussion, direction, and possible action on matters related to Unisource franchise agreement. Our discussion is pretty much that we're kind of unhappy right now with the progress we've had with Unisource on the franchise agreement they have with the city of Nogales. It's something that I guess at the time they just took it on their own to close the office and leave us without an office. We've been trying to reach negotiations to maybe something that they would provide something that would make the citizens of this community happy. The thing is that whatever they have to offer, we have to go back to the public and put it like in a special election and get a vote from the people on it. So at this time, we're still trying to hopefully open negotiations with Unisource and see if they can just fulfill their part of the agreement with the franchise and the contract with the city of Nogales, and they can provide us with the office that we used to have a couple of years ago. So right now, I guess Mr. Lucero is here. He represents Unisource, and he's got his district manager, Mr. Guevara. I don't know if maybe you'd like to stand in the podium and give us some words. I'll see what if you have something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Larry Lucero, Senior Director, Government Relations Economic Development for UNS Energy Corporation, Tucson Electric, and Unisource Gas and Electric here in the Santa Cruz region. And we were here back in October, had a conversation with the Mayor and Council in 2014 on this matter. And at that time, we had direction from the Mayor and Council to proceed with a solution to an issue that had been raised during the acquisition of our company by Fortis. And in that transaction, Mayor sent a representative, I think it was your Vice Mayor Hennessian, who testified on your behalf. And at that time, during those conversations, we made a commitment that we would provide a tool to address an issue that was brought to our attention. That is, customers who were making cash payments were making an additional payment in terms of a service fee. And we committed that we would look for an option for those customers who made a cash payment so that there wouldn't be a fee associated with their payment. By way of history, all of the utility industry has been going through this change with respect to looking for efficiencies, looking for new technologies to employ to allow our customers to have more flexible options in how they pay their bills, how they, first of all, apply for service, how they manage their accounts, how they add new services or make changes to their service. The entire industry has gone through this change, and with that change, we've come to the recognition that there are efficiencies available to us by doing certain things differently. And one of the things that all of our industry has done is they've basically gotten out of the business of having these offices, as you call the customer service office, and have gone to a new method of providing customer service, which is much more efficient and really addresses what customers need in terms of applying for service or dealing with their issues. And so as a way to pass on those savings to our customers, we think that that's been the prudent approach across all of our companies, not just here in Santa Cruz County, but also in Lake Havasu and also in Tucson. It's funny to report, back in 2000, when we closed the very large customer payment windows that we had in Tucson, that we also negotiated a brand new franchise with the city of Tucson. And so at that time, when we were negotiating the franchise with the city of Nogales, at that time the city of Nogales said, we want you to have the same language that you have with the city of Tucson. And so we incorporated the language that we have in the franchise agreement with the city of Tucson into the city of Nogales franchise in 2004, and then was presented to the voters and it was adopted by a large majority. And so we figured that, those conditions being what they are, that here we are 10 years later, that there wouldn't be any problems with changes that occurred or have been occurring in our industry over the last 10 years. So it was a surprise to us that once we did our due diligence with respect to 2013, late 2012, early 2013, when we were going to change the way that we ran the customer service operation here, that we educated the public, we talked to the staff, we talked to mayor and council, made them aware of what the changes were going to occur and how that was going to occur. And most importantly was, what were the options available to customers in order for them to transact their business with Unisource Gas or Electric. We did a very extensive job of informing the customers, and we did segment all the customers so that we understood how they like to pay their bills. And so we think that we had a pretty good rollout when that occurred in early April of 2013. Since that time, we've been tracking customer behavior. At the peak, at the Mastic office, I think we had about 8,000 transactions, both gas and electric, on a monthly basis. By the time we got to April of 2013, because of the education campaign we had already done, we had about 5,700 transactions occurring there the last month we were there. Fast forward to January of 2014, so we had already had about 6 months of activity. We saw that the different ways that customers were paying their bills were pretty much similar, except for those who were paying cash. They had discovered that they could go to various payment locations in the Nogales area where they could make those payments. And by way of example, they were using the Walmart, Kmart, Food City, Safeway, and even the Ace, America's Cash Express payment locations. But for the most part, those customers have actually been dwindling over time as they have found better ways to make their payments, to the extent that now almost 40% of our customers are paying online or with the voice response system. 31% are paying using the mail. You can write a check and deposit it. And then 8% are using other financial institutions, the auto pay, what we call the SNAP payment. So that leaves about 21% who are still physically going someplace, and we call them walk-ins. And of those walk-ins, we have about 5,400 a month that are still walking into one of those locations that I mentioned earlier, the Walmarts, Kmarts, Food City, Safeways, and such, that of those, 73% are still paying in cash. So we figured that about 3,900 customers as of December of 2014, fast forwarding to last month, are still utilizing the cash payment system to pay their bills. So the work that we've been doing over the last half of 2014 with your staff to identify a tool that we thought would answer your concern has been identified. We've got, this is a tool that, if you could pass it on, Councilman Diaz. I think I've got enough for everybody. It's a tool that takes cash payments and is able to conduct a transaction and give a record to the customer, so that in the event that they are at their very last day before their bill comes due, that they have a receipt that gives them a phone number as well as the amount that was collected from them, so that they have a record of that transaction. So we thought that sometimes our customers do wait to the last minute, so we wanted to assure that this tool would provide some assurance that if that customer has been scheduled for disconnect that day, that they could call us, have their receipt number, and we would then be able to take them off the disconnect list. So we've gone through a series of steps to make sure that that system is the right tool that could answer that need that was identified during the times that your representative came before the Corporation Commission. So that's been our focus over the last 6 months, to provide you an alternative that answers that question, so that cash paying customers can go someplace, pay their cash, make the cash payment without having to pay a fee. So we've accomplished that, and we provide that for you. We had a series of questions that staff identified that we wanted to address. I think we've answered all those questions. Our questions to the city were, do you have a space here in your lobby? Because we would prefer to locate the tool that we've identified in your lobby and then mark it to those customers specifically, so they would come here and make those payments. So we needed a 2x2 space with an outlet so we could plug it in, and I think the internet access was adequate with respect to the cell service that was going to be necessary. And we've also gone through a process of identifying, okay, what other steps would we need to conduct in order to make the system work, and that is our staff will come by every day, take the payments that have been made, organize them in a manner, and then have the courier come by and pick them up. So we've worked out a mechanism for providing that resource. But I understand that, you know, according to your item here on the agenda, talks more about the franchise agreement. I'm not prepared to negotiate or enter into any negotiations here tonight, but I just wanted to brief you and update you on the fact that we have identified a tool. We've got a tool ready, can be put into service by the middle of February, that deals with the issue that you identified, and that we think that we have come up with a solution that addresses your need. That's what we were directed to do. We will report to the Corporation Commission that we have accomplished that. But if it is the desire of the mayor and council to not accept the use of that tool, well, that's your choice. And you know, we'll go away and take our machine and send it back to the manufacturer. Should you choose to also enter into some further discussions about the franchise, that's your decision to make. I won't be here to have that conversation, so I don't think I'm the franchise expert, but nevertheless, I'm familiar enough with them, and I've given you the history of how we got the franchise that you have today in place with the election and with the negotiation, and also modeled after the city of Tucson. I can assure you, though, that because it's modeled after what we did in Tucson, there are no customer service offices, and there are no issues with the city of Tucson with that system. And so I just want to make you aware of that. If you choose to have additional conversations of what the franchise says or its intent, that's again your choice, and I will be happy to report back to our folks that that's the direction you want to take. That's the direction you want to take. And what I need to hear from you, though, is if you're no longer going to direct staff to continue to work with us on the installation of the tool, well, we need to know that too. So appreciate the opportunity to address you on the subject.
I just want one correction, Mary. Please don't go to the ACC and say that we agreed to a kiosk as a solution to this. That's not any representation that the city ever made. We entered into negotiation to address the problem, but it would be incorrect to say that we agreed to a kiosk as a solution and report that to the ACC. If you do that, then we're gonna have to controvert that, and that's not gonna get either one of us anywhere.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Lucero.
Mr. Mayor, City Attorney Chavez, regardless of whatever we like this proposal or not, is it your opinion that it would still require a vote of the public to accept this change, and what is in place, or
Sure.
in terms of language for an office?
I guess if I can, and Mr. Luceros. I guess, let me set forth our position so that you can convey it back. It is our position that the franchise agreement has certain requirements. Regardless of what Tucson has and regardless of what they've accepted, our franchise agreement has certain requirements. In order for those requirements to be modified, the proper procedure is to enter into negotiations to change what's required under the franchise agreement. And whatever we agree, if we come to an agreement that this will be in lieu of what's presently there, it still has to be presented to the voters for their approval. Under our charter, the franchise agreement has to be approved by the voters. This was approved by the voters. We cannot, as a council, unilaterally change this agreement, just as you guys cannot unilaterally change this agreement. We can reach negotiations, reach an accommodation, and we can hope, if it's favorable enough, then we can have it presented to the public, and then they'll decide ultimately whether they want to change the franchise agreement.
I appreciate your clarification, and but our reading of the franchise and the operations that we've been conducting here since that franchise was adopted, the company was delivering all those services as are stipulated in the franchise. And at the time when Unisource Gas and Electric made their changes to their operations, relocating their operations to a new building, at that time there was no trigger mechanism, there was no trigger in the franchise that said that there would be a discussion with the city that required of either approval or a vote of the people. Like we understood the franchise language to specifically say, as long as you maintain a customer service office, and we continue to provide a office in the service territory, the franchise is fairly clear on that. I'm not clear, though, as to where we would reopen the franchise so that conditions would be amended in the franchise to require a vote. I'm not clear that there's a need for that in the current language that's contained within the franchise. Because I don't know that there's a triggering mechanism.
The section is Section 8 under both agreements. It requires certain that a certain office be maintained and certain services be provided within the corporate limits of the city, okay? Now, our position is that you had been complying with that. You did have an office here, and at some point you decided unilaterally that that office was going to be shut down. Now, we can disagree as to what that says, and we obviously do. If we disagree with that, then we're gonna let a court decide who's right. If we're right on this, then the only way this can be modified is if it goes to the vote of the people. And that's clear in the agreement itself. The agreement itself indicates the necessity of having this agreement presented to the voters. It specifically talks about the sections of the Constitution and the sections of the Charter that require approval by the voters. So, to me, it should have been triggered when Unisource says we're going to do something different from what's required under the contract. That should have been the trigger to come to the city and say, okay, what's the proper procedure for us to change this?
I appreciate your explanation, but however, we did notify the city that we were going to make visible change, that we went through an entire process of notification of our customers, that there would be a change in terms of how their payment location was changing, was being closed, and that there were other payment options that we were going to market to them and make them aware of. That in our conversations with you, never triggered a request to present an amended franchise to the public for a vote. And we went through the notification process with you all, had these conversations, and presented to you, the mayor and council back in 2013, some of you were present, that at that time there was no indication from the city that this was a triggering event that would require that type of process to occur. We thought that at that time that we were working within the structure of the franchise, which allows you to do those sort of things in terms of a business, to relocate your service facility to another location, as long as you were meeting the requirement that we were still in the city. We were still within the service territory, so we were very comfortable with that. Did not mean that you needed to have an amendment to the franchise.
Well, Larry, I certainly don't want to get into an adversarial position here, but I've been involved in this thing for now, a year and a half at least. And during all that time and all the meetings I had with you, with your council, I made it very clear from the very beginning, our position, that you guys were in violation of the franchise agreement. I don't think that's a surprise. I made it that clear from the very beginning. So that should have triggered something. What are we gonna do about it? And that's what we're at this point. What are we gonna do about it?
Well, we've offered you, with all due respect, we have offered you a solution. We've had the same conversation over the last 6 months with respect to, okay, so how do we address that need? We presented a tool and a mechanism for meeting the needs of some of those customers that you felt were being perhaps disenfranchised with the way that they were used to doing business with us. But I think we've come up with an alternative and a location, if you so choose, that we think works to meet those needs. And so that's that's where we are in terms of trying to come up with a solution. And so we've been working focused on that aspect, and not so much on the aspect of whether or not we should have an arbiter rule and whether or not there has been any violation of the franchise, which is, that's your choice as well. If that's the path you want to take, you have the right to do that, and that conversation can go forward.
But that path is really dependent on what position you take. We have no choice but to take it into court unless you offer something different in lieu, something satisfactory in lieu of what's required in Section 8. And like what the council will accept, that's wholly within their discretion. And I'm certainly not trying to say that legally we've put a stop to any negotiation. But once and if an agreement is reached, there has to be proper steps in order to get it approved by the voters. That we can't change.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a lawyer or a franchise authority, but I've been around enough franchises where I don't think it rises to that level. But that's something for you and the legal department to negotiate and not necessarily negotiate, but at least to arbitrate and come to some conclusion. I just need to be clear from your perspective that, should I pull off our IT people and our customer service people from any further work on the mechanism tool that we were prepared to make available, because I need to know that from the city as to whether or not I take up any more of Mr. Kissinger's time and some of your other staff who have been working with us to put this solution into play. If that's not the solution that you want to pursue, then we need to be clear as to whether or not we should do any more work on that.
Again, I don't want to speak for the council, and I'm not saying that is not part of the solution, but I don't want to give the impression that is the solution that they've agreed to. So what I would suggest from a legal point of view is let's continue this negotiations, but I would suggest some type of framework and some type of time limits so that we don't spin our wheels for another 18 months.
Councilman Lucero.
Mr. Mayor, again, just for clarification, regardless of whether or not we accept something other than an office, it would still require voter approval. And the language is clear that an office must be provided to provide customer service. So anything other than an office would require voter approval.
That's my opinion, Mr. Lucero.
That's not the opinion of the company. The opinion of the company is that the language in the franchise allows for the activities that we've pursued up to this point in terms of providing you a solution are well within the parameters of the franchise agreement and the conduct of our business in this territory. The solution that we've designed and that we've worked on to provide you an option that doesn't exist today for those customers is well within the bounds of the conduct of our business. And we'd be happy to proceed to work out those details, but I can assure you, the machine's ready to plug in on February the 15th or 14th, and we're ready to proceed. And as the city attorney mentioned, if you want to continue the other conversation with our legal staff, we'd be happy to make that available to you as part of our work with the community. We have a lot of activities that are underway or respective activities that we have planned in terms of conduct of our business, and so this is another item that we'll put on the agenda to deal with. But I want to make sure that we do not confuse our customers with respect to they probably are expecting that something is going to be provided that allows them to do what they do without a fee that being incurred. So that's an opportunity we'd hate to throw away all the work that we've done, and up to this point, I think we have a pretty good solution for you.
Mr. Councilman Lucero.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we direct city staff to continue negotiating with Unisource TEP on a solution that can be brought back to council within the next 30 days. I think all of us have expressed and made our feelings clear to the city attorney and city manager on where we stand, and I think they have enough direction to move forward.
Yes, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Under consent agenda, line 7, we have A, B, and C, all for liquor licenses. So do I need to read each one as we have a motion to
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have the minutes approval from meeting Wednesday, December 10th, 2014.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And line 8, orders. Number 1, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01-001.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Or do we have any discussion? I'm sorry. No discussion?
Just clarification, there's a grant for Stone Garden for $129,455 being reimbursed.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Parada is correct. Both items 1 and 2 under your orders are tied directly to the State Department of Homeland Security. It's the Stone Garden, next round of Stone Garden grants. Item 1 is specifically tied to capital and equipment. Item 2 is specifically tied to overtime and mileage. Both of them are reimbursement grants, which means that staff would expend the funds and then seek the state for reimbursement after the fact.
Any more discussion?
Thank you.
Now, are we bringing both items, or just the one individual?
Yeah, one, but while I was describing the one, I just thought I'd grab two.
Okay, so, Under orders, we have number one, all those in, we have a motion, and we have a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Line 2, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01-002.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I guess we had discussion on that. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Number 3, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01003, in order of the Council of the City of Nogales, Arizona, to authorize the submission of an order of the Council of the City of Nogales, Arizona, submission of an application for fiscal year 2015 State Community Development Block Grant Funds, certifying that said application meets the community previously identified housing and community development need and the requirements of the state CDBG program, and authorizing all actions necessary to implement and complete the activities outlined in said application. This is just for an application, right? So, would you like to comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I could have Mr. Kissinger stand up, just briefly explain to the council what this is.
Mr. Mayor, you have this order in front of you. There's been previously some public hearings where the community can bring forth projects to use for the CDBG grant. Tonight, it's important that we also have a public hearing, so I'm encouraging the mayor to allow the public to address this council on this item, during this item, before you make a decision. The 12 projects that qualified, that were presented and do qualify for consideration for the application are in front of you in the order. And so after hearing public input and discussing it amongst yourselves, staff would like you to pick one of the 12 and send us marching down the road with the application to the Department of Housing for this grant. The grant amount is $333,000, I believe.
So the question is, out of these programs, we only have $333,000 to work with.
Yes, sir, and only one project can be picked. We can't split the money up between the 12 projects.
And do we have any, we're going to open it up for comments to the public. Do we have any comments from the public? If anybody would like to come to the podium and comment on this grant? Yes, sir. Would you?
Mr. Mayor, I understand he's fond of water projects.
Yeah, I love water. I love water.
Mr. Urban, state your name and address for record.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Neil Sermon. I live at 3019 North Calle Coronado in Meadow Hills, Nogales, Arizona. How many projects? 12. I'm aware of maybe 3 or 4 of them. I think there's brought forth was a facade program for the downtown area, and also possible support of an incubator. And then there was a proposal for the old City Hall and Fire Station downtown Nogales, as one of the many projects that were part of the public process. As a downtown centric right now, and trying to support any reinvestment that we can in this community towards in the downtown area of Nogales, I would love to see support for the old City Hall and Fire Station downtown. I think the Community Block Grant Program kind of provides for some initial support to that effort. Upper level accessibility, some safety, ADA compliance concerns, balcony, the ability to reuse that building or additional use of that building for the rest of the community. And I think as one of the icons, really 2 iconic structures in this city are the old City Hall Fire Station and also the old 1904 courthouse. The opportunity to be able to start to begin to reinvest. I think part of a reinvestment would not only be the accessibility of the upper level and some of the safety concerns. I heard earlier a discussion of possible support to fix some of the facilities down the restroom facilities, but also maybe some additional structural engineering studies that can be done to get a grasp of what a real, over a long period of time, what kind of financial support you would need on a phased out approach to really bring that building back to full use for this community in different levels. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman, appreciate your comments. I would love to see that done. I know that there's some real important pending issues there that we have, and I guess I'll open up for discussion from the council. See, I know that one of the things that we also had pending that's costing the city some money, because the water line bills that we have up there in McNabb, I believe. I don't know if that falls into that.
It would qualify as a project.
John?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, John?
I'd also like, before you make a decision on this item, I'd like to give the opportunity for Mr. Guerra to come forward and speak with you about some of the possible challenges there might be in some of these projects prior to you making a decision. So I know that Bonnie Williams is also here from SEGO, who's an expert on the matter. They can also guide you into making your decision and talking about some of the limitations or some of the challenge you have while making this application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Welcome, council members. So I'm here to, I invited Bonnie Williams from SEGO, who is, has more than 20 years working with the CDG program, so she's an expert in this matter. Right now, as Old City Hall was recommended as a project, she was telling me that Old City Halls qualifies, and that's the reason why in the list that you have in your item agenda, it says yes, no. It has limitations in terms of if the Old City Hall is in use as a city hall, and only 88 accessories are applicable for the project. So it has limitations. So, and because the use of that building is not city hall, it's another type of use that is not in the priority list of Department of Housing. So it is challenging. So we just wanted to clarify that particular point. I don't know if you have more questions for me or Bonnie.
Did that bring clarity to the Old City Hall project in terms of whether, you know, how strong of a project it is in qualifying for CDBG?
Well, if you'd like to comment a little more, I appreciate all the information you get.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bonnie Williams from Southeast Arizona Government Organization. The biggest obstacle we're finding now with the State Department of Housing is they have taken this very broad CDBG program that has allowed communities to do many, many types of projects. For instance, parks. Nogales, in many years past, has done a lot of park improvements. But they have decided that they know best, and they have limited that list that's nationally eligible to their priority list. It's coming funded, HUD funds it through the Department of Housing. So naturally, housing rehabilitation is their top priority. Next is infrastructure. And there's other things I'm thinking maybe in your packet you have a copy or Juan's presentation. He has a sort of a listing of those priorities, high, medium. Anything low on that list will not be funded. Currently, however, just for your information, on the Department of Housing's website, they have a survey open to the public and cities to suggest what sorts of projects, you know, so because they're in the middle of producing the document called the Consolidated Plan for HUD, which will outline the direction the CDBG program goes in future years. But currently, for this application, a museum is not the type of community facility that they would fund. So it really should be considered as ineligible at this time. There's also quite a few on your, you have this chart where you will see the no like parks or anything. Several in the Hilltop Gallery, it's the same sort of situation where the use of that is not considered a community facility. That's a high priority for the state. Anything with economic development is extremely difficult. Very, very few communities in the state attempt to do that because it puts you on the hook. You might have a private business or people you want to, help over here, but if they fail, sometime in that 5-year affordability period, you're on the hook to pay that money back. So that's one of the issues you have. So those sorts of projects need a lot of time and detailed planning, and a lot of ducks in the row, so to speak, and shouldn't be, a last minute kind of decision. As I mentioned before, the infrastructure types of projects, we've also just discovered sort of a new thing. HUD recently came out with new low to moderate income numbers for every community in the state, based not necessarily on the last census, but on this ongoing American Community Survey. Partly because the last census did not collect the income data they need to determine low to moderate income status in each neighborhood. So basically, it's coming down, as the buck rolls down the hill, right? Now the cities and towns have got to prove that people who live on that street you want to pave are indeed low to moderate income. So even though this Nogales is one of the few states few cities in the whole state that have come in over 51%, unless you are picking a project that indeed benefits everyone in the city, then you still have to income qualify the people that live on that street, or the people that live where the water line is going to service them. So that's really bad news, and a lot of communities are reeling now with like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What kind of project can we pick? Because of these more limitations that have been recently imposed. So part of what we are suggesting as a strategy is that you, although you're really only allowed one project, I would encourage you perhaps to have an alternate tonight. For instance, say you decide on the McNabb water line project, which from all indications is costing the city a lot of money in repairs. Sounds like a reasonable project, very straightforward as far as all the rules and regulations go, but that's going to require that special income survey. The survey itself is very time consuming, and I'm no doubt that the people will be eligible. The problem is with those surveys, you've got to get a very high response rate. So if people won't answer that survey or won't answer their door, because you have to have volunteers going door to door, you could be like, oh my gosh, we can't get that 90% response rate, what do we do? So your alternate project could be something that benefits strictly what we call a limited clientele. That's groups of people that are automatically considered low to moderate income, such as seniors or the disabled, migrant farm workers, homeless people. You are limited to the things that were listed in your ad, those 12 items, that came up at the public hearing. But housing rehabilitation would be my suggestion as your backup. In that case, each individual homeowner income qualifies. So you're not limited by where it is in the city. It can be anywhere as long as the owner has owned the land for a year, owned the house for a year and lived in it, and can income qualify. And that's an administratively burdensome project, but that's the direction the state wants you to go. Infrastructure or housing is their priorities. Any questions?
Yeah, yes, Councilman Lopez.
Yeah, Mr. I just want to find out, number 11, it's improvements to the senior center. Would that come into?
That's eligible, but it's not going to take your whole grant, unless you can think of some more things to do there. But yes, that would be an eligible program.
Councilman Rosado?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's difficult for us because of all the projects that were listed, the only projects that had the dollar figure attached to them was the project that was recommended by the city. So we really don't know the financial impact of the other proposed programs. So I think we're I guess, in a weak position to really know what what each of the projects cost. We really don't know what the other projects are, including the project recommended by the city, how many people are gonna benefit by that project. Bonnie indicated they'd have to do an income survey. Now, how many properties are along McNabb? I don't imagine it'd be that many, so.
Juan was going to check the distribution system and see who, because the main, you know, it could be a very large area.
The project's only half of it,
And
Just to let you know, the project that's put forward is only half of McNabb. It's not the entire length of McNabb.
Right,
Because of
just what
funding
could be
limitations.
afforded with the grant. And by the way, that 330,000 is an estimate. We won't even know the final funding until maybe March or April, which again puts another burden on everybody, you know, who's going through this process, because the state has said, we want your letter of intent by the end of January. We want to know what you're doing, you know, and then the applications are due May. You know, there is probably a little flexibility in there, but that's, I've many times said, that's not right, Department of Housing, please push the application dates back until we know how much funding we have and can make a more intelligent decision.
Mr. Mayor, Bonnie, you indicated that the senior center project wouldn't,
Yeah, seniors are automatically considered low to moderate income.
but the question is, there would be money left over. and-
One is estimated, well, his notes here,
Yeah,
is
I received a
52,000
quote
or
for
so.
52,000.
And the question I was gonna ask was, you said we only could submit one project. So I guess the question is, if a project is below what's available, can we submit more than one project?
Technically, yes. The application handbook has what's called thresholds. So I checked, and basically you could do two. Still not recommended, but they would allow you only because in the past you've done your projects well. There's been no findings. We've done them on time. So basically they're targeting communities that are not getting
Mr.
started
Mayor,
on the projects.
Would it be possible to get the cost numbers that the city engineer, I guess, provided to Segal but not to council? So we-
Well, he just handed me his notes here, so.
It's in the list.
I guess the question would be, how much was the city hall, old city hall project?
Well, that one is not eligible at all, so it's the old city hall
Or
project.
if we did an ADA compliant?
Okay, just that part of it, you mean, you
Let
say.
me help you with this. Mr. Councilman Fleur, what happened is these are the inputs given by the community. Most of them, I guess, Aaron White helped us with these inputs, and also people from the senior center and then other residents here. So they offered these ideas, and it was very hard for me because it was very vague, like business incubator, things like that, that I had no clue how much it will cost. So that's one of the risks that having the limited money here and saying, okay, let's go with this project, not knowing how much it will cost is a little bit risky. And then obviously the city will have to match whatever money is spent. But so I provided the numbers where I was capable of providing this number, like the project infrastructure. And then senior center provided a request for 52,000. The Hilltop Gallery requested 104,000, but that project don't qualify. So the rest I didn't get numbers. It's very difficult.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Can I ask, how much time do we have before we have to undertake these projects?
Well, you've done a public participation process, and so that last public notice, the one in the newspaper, said tonight you would make your decision. So, and with this letter of intent to put in January, you don't have we don't have any time to reschedule that.
Yes, ma'am, would you like to come up again and speak?
You don't mind.
Is it okay, if you have more to say, Bonnie, it's okay, just stand, we have some
Just
questions.
Just one clarification, I'm not, is the museum, is the old city hall owned by the city? Okay. All right, then the ADA should be okay. You know, if you want to do ADA improvements to that, but I understand it's not accessible, not possible to make it accessible from the outside steps.
But just bring it up to.
Yeah, anything to bring it up to accessibility standards would be eligible, I believe.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, you get a good engineer and you have endless supply of money, anything's possible.
That's true. I
I
don't
guess
know.
Mr. Irvin, did you have something?
Thank you. Just as a point of clarification, I recognize, part of this process is to be able to get projects out there on the open in case additional funding comes available within the next funding rounds before the city gets its next allotment, but there may be set aside money for colonias and that sort of thing. So I feel the need to put it out there. The old City Hall and Fire Station is a community facility owned by the city of Nogales. It's not a museum, and it's not the city hall. It is a community facility with the opportunity, once it's accessible, can be able to offer services to other people in the community at the upper levels. But by making that space accessible, and therefore making it available to everybody in the community, okay? It is also situated in one of the lowest income, per capita income census tracts within the city limits of the city of Nogales. So I do have to, I just wanted to put that out there. I recognize the mayor and council are going to pick some other may pick up other projects. So that's from that perspective, and I didn't want you to think of it as, oh, it's just a museum or it's a city hall. And I think the community facilities meet the guidelines of CDBG funding. The other thing is, everything has restrictions and everything is negotiable. The other thing is on housing rehab, though it's recommended, individual housing rehab, and Bonnie did allude to it, it's extremely complicated. Nogales Community Development did 5 homes on housing rehab using some HUD economic development money on Elm Street, and I think also Noon, right? And we had to income qualify them and those sorts of things, and very, very difficult projects to do. Extremely difficult and complicated, and you won't meet the needs of the conditions of the homes that are in our housing tracts in Nogales.
So thank you for that information.
Mr. Mayor? May I ask just Mrs. Williams another question, please?
Mrs. Williams?
Bonnie, given that eloquent description of our old city hall, does that shed any additional light on whether or not Old City Hall project as a whole project might better qualify for these funds?
Well, again, most community facilities, for instance, a youth center, things like that, are low priority, won't be funded.
Okay.
So just because a community facility is an eligible activity, it depends on what it is used for.
It would just fall under that
And it also has to
low
be open
priority.
20 hours a week and,
Okay.
different, requirements. Again, and I must admit, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure that you could just do the accessibility, changes for that building.
I would like to add something else. One of the recommendations by the Department of Housing as well is when we choose a project, try to select something easy to do in terms of not in a floodplain, not in a floodway, not in an environmental area that we are risking special plants or animals, things like that. So picking a project is not as easy as that. We need to be sure that it's not in the floodplain, that will not present challenges, because the Department of Housing also give us 2 years to complete the project, or they potentially can take the money back. So that's another thing to consider.
Do we have any more? Yes, the councilman.
Mr. Mayor, I had questions on the grant administration itself. In the, I guess the proposal, we currently are contracting with SEGA to provide grant administration to the tune of about 18%, is that correct?
Usually you do.
So in dollars, this is roughly $60,000 that would go to.
Oh, gosh, no. We've never charged the 18% that's allowed.
So I guess the question
Yeah,
is how much?
it's about half that usually. Depends on the type of project, but we'll negotiate that. We'll say, this is your project, this is how much money you need, well, what's left kind of, and what can we do to
That was
work
the
it out.
question, if that was negotiable. so.
Yeah, oh, always.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Councilman. Well, it seems like, Councilman Parada.
Engineer Olvera, since you know most of these projects, what are your recommendations on this, in the price tag on it?
Well, I brainstormed a lot about these projects. It's part of my job, and based on my prior experiences and the challenges given by the water failures on McNabb, I counted about 32 patches in the road in one block only, and those were in the last 5 years. It's a section that requires us to be there almost every 2 weeks or maybe more, so it's costing the city a lot, and then a lot of frustrations from citizens, because that water main not only serves that block, but also downstream properties, because it's like a distribution main, and it's not adequate for 5 flow. It's a 6-inch water main. It's asbestos cement. We are proposing to replace that with a bigger water main and include 5 hydrants. Obviously, we are not resolving the entire area because it's just a section. With the money available, it's not enough, but at least we can replace the most difficult area. So that's my recommendation, and based on my experience with private projects, I'm very confident that the money that I figured out will be within that budget.
I've been to that area and I've been to all those travel calls, and I know it costs a lot of money just to replace it. The equipment is being used.
Yes.
We did give added consideration due to maybe some safety factors, like maybe with lines that are asbestos, cement, to replace those that are old and factor date. Would they give more consideration to that project, aside from everything else that they need out there? Is that something that we should put out there?
You're talking about water lines?
Replacing some of the water lines,
Asbestos?
they're
Yeah.
made from that old asbestos cement. And usually, I think they don't use that anymore, do they?
Yeah, I think that are still in use, but most of the current practices has been not using that type of material anymore. To the best of my knowledge, I believe that the asbestos cement is safe for water transmissions and water distribution mains, but what is dangerous is when the employees are cutting the pipe and the dust is toxic. So that's the only thing.
And that's the problem, that is the water's not there on the line, it dries up, and then that's when we get contaminated. So I was just wondering.
Well, I guess if certain, you have to follow the proper abatement procedures if there's asbestos in the lines that are being removed. That would be the contractor's responsibility.
I know they flush them out
Oh.
and get them off, but I mean, I was just wondering if we could throw that in as a.
No,
Incentive.
it's inconsequential. If you need that water line replaced, if it's falling apart, the state doesn't care what it's made out of.
How would it,
Thank you.
land on there for?
High. Infrastructure projects are high. And I checked, here's the list, it's called the action plan. So community and supportive housing facilities, so your ADA improvements would be eligible in that community center. But again, 20 hours a week, you have to keep that open. I don't know what the schedule is for the old fire station, old city hall. And so that, but like other facilities, youth center, library are low, they won't fund that anymore at this time.
Councilman Lucero, did you have?
I'm ready to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the city move forward with the application for the McNabb water line project as presented, and that we use the old city hall and senior center projects as our backup in case McNabb project runs into problems.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I guess we discussed it pretty much. Does anybody else have any more discussion on it? Okay, all those who want to approve that, signify by saying aye.
Just one clarification, You had number one and then the other two options. The options that you gave, are they in the order of priority that you want?
That is correct.
Okay, it's just a clarify.
Thank you. Motion.
I would like to add a little comment. Let's say, I would like to clarify expectations about, you are now authorizing us to submit the application, but please do not expect that next month we'll be digging there and get places to work. So it's a lengthy process, so.
And I might add to that, your application's due May, it's going to be the fall before the state even reviews them and gets back to you with questions. Then they're going to want the environmental review done, and then they'll fund it. Sort of a new timeline now, so it's quite a ways off, being able to actually see construction.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we'll put together a tentative timeline for this project and get it to you, but as our own experience would lend us to understand, you know, I wouldn't anticipate this being any sooner than 2 years out. So.
I have one more question for Mr. Herrera. You know, I'm very concerned about the street on Kino Street. It goes up to.
It's the next item.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Number 4,
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I make a recommendation on number 4 and 5 because they are together? We could have just one discussion to explain everything, and then you could call for a motion to approve both items 4 and 5,
okay,
as noted on the agenda, and that might help us get through that particular item.
appreciate that. Okay, so, you want me to read both of them then?
Please, and then we'll give you a brief description.
All right, so we have item number 4 and number 5. Number 4, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01-004, in order of the City Council of the City of Nogales authorizing the submission of an amendment to Arizona Department of Housing. Number 5, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01-005, in order of the City Council of the City of Nogales committing local funds as leverage for a fiscal year 2013 Community Development Block Grant Contract number 118-14.
So move.
Second.
Okay, all right. Did you wanna?
Okay, no, hey, it's up to the council. That's speeding it up real quick.
Yeah, they're going, we're ready to break. I had the motion supposed to say.
Okay, did you wanna comment on that?
If the council needs explanation, happy to provide some background. If
I
not,
think
then.
it pretty much explains itself.
Councilman Parada had a question about Kino Street.
Right, I did have a question. So I'm very concerned about the school, White Carpenter. The road's really tough going up to that road. It's got a lot of holes in it. And it's only have an inch of cake and it's already gone.
So what you just motioned and seconded is an effort by staff to creatively utilize the remaining monies from the past CDBG round that paved Hughes Street and leverage those monies against some in-kind and some material costs from our HERF fund to completely pave, and there's a map that designates the parameters of this, but to completely pave Kino Street. Okay, so that's in short. There's a lot of detail that we can go into, but the staff's definitely recommending approval on this so that we can get that project moving forward as fast as possible.
Thank you. So, is there a motion to approve line 4 and 5?
You have a motion and.
We already have a motion.
Yeah.
Second. Oh, that was to approve it.
Yeah.
That's what I said, yeah, they're going quick.
Let's put it to a vote, and, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We go to number 6, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01-006, in order of the mayor and council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, reappointing city magistrate and approving employment agreement. Well, I'm glad that our magistrate is still with us. I don't know if she wants to comment anything, but I'd like to say that I've been in her courtroom many a time, done evaluations, and I've been very pleased with the work that your courtroom and the respect that you show the people that before you. It's very encouraging to see that we have such a high quality magistrate yourself.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure to be before you, to be considered for reappointment. And it has always been the court's procedure and policy to have its doors open. And I thank you so much for visiting, for all of those who have and who are currently not here because they were in the previous administration. And it has been my distinct privilege and honor to serve as your judge. And it would continue to be my distinct privilege and honor if so approved today.
Thank you very much. I guess we, you know, as far as, I'll just say that I'd like to make a motion to approve the employment agreement for a judge, Mayra Galindo, and if, we have a second? Okay. Okay, and any discussion? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go first.
No, I just have one, I just want to make sure this is a full-time contract. It's not in here, it's not written in here. The only thing that says here is Galindo shall devote her full attention. But this is a full-time contract.
It's basically just the same contract that you had before, I believe, and maybe we had just a minor adjustment.
Mr. Macho?
Yes, it is, Councilwoman Lopez. Just like the magistrates, my contract and Mr. Dilly's, they're all full-time. There's no designation as to when she has to keep court or anything like that. But yes, they're all considered full-time. They all put in their full-time work.
Councilman Lucero?
Mr. Mayor, Judge, I want to thank the city attorney for helping. I had a few questions on the language in your agreement, and just for clarification, it's my understanding a lot of the language is statutory. Could you clarify for us what is required by law to be included in your agreement, just so we and the public know that there are things that are statutorily required that we really can't modify or change?
Well, specifically, it would be actually what you touched on, Councilwoman. Legally, the judge can't have another legal profession or another job or have any other kind of activity that would engage her or his attention. It's a full-time position. In reference to what is legally required, well, there's some case law and there's some statutes in reference to terms that have been designated up through Arizona Constitution. Specifically, it's Article 6, Section 32. And then there's case law as well in reference to terms of office and how they have to be respected by your Honorable Mayor and Council based on case law whereby before justices of the peace or police officers called magistrates before they were called magistrates were just capriciously terminated and went. And so as a result of certain case law was developed and the Arizona Constitution through Article 6, the terms cannot be just at whim changed by your Honorable Mayor and Council. But anything and everything else is actually the exact same as previously authorized, and there's nothing else that is mandated. Unless, of course, there's something that I'm missing, Mr. Machado, that you would like to refer to.
No, if I can add a little bit to that. Previously and under our charter, the city magistrate was at will. You could remove her at any time for any reason or no reason. The Arizona Supreme Court came out with an opinion that says that's a violation of the separation of powers of the legislative and the judicial. So what they said is you can appoint the magistrate, but it has to be for a certain number of years. You don't have to reappoint her afterwards, but once you appoint her, the only person that is qualified to remove her for cause, and I say her or any magistrate, would be the Arizona Supreme Court through the Superior Court, which now exercises supervisory authority over the lower courts.
That's correct.
Does that do, Mr. Michelle?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Your Honor, practicing just in case.
Never just in case.
In your packet, you submitted comparable salaries in the area. And I guess just looking at compensation for judges that are probably more in proximity and in size to Nogales, you're underselling yourself in terms of salary, and I was just wondering how.
I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
And I was just wondering how you came up with the salary you proposed versus what others are paying for a judge.
I could reasonably go well within the higher range because that's what you see within the courts that are surrounding us. But I understand that we're going through difficult financial times, and what is requested is more than extremely reasonable pursuant to your observation. I do agree with you, it is an undersell, but I'm not in it for $190,000 salary. I love what I do. I really do, and the compensation sought is more than adequate.
And I just wanted to clarify that, I think you're doing a great job, and I think you are underselling yourself for the salary that you're requesting, and I think you would probably get support for an increase.
Well, if anybody wants to motion that, I thank you very much, very much.
And just one last thing, and it's probably in a lot of the other professional contracts that you have, Mr. Mayor, is I noticed that there is no cap on accrued sick leave and vacation leave, and while I understand it's probably not an issue in your case, it's probably something I'd like to see us address in the future, where we actually put a cap in place for our contract employees. Thank you.
Any more questions or discussion?
Well, I just want to say that I attended your course, but I haven't done it this year, and you handled yourself very well.
Well, thank you very much. You're all
Very
very welcome
professional.
to come anytime. For visit.
Good job. It's a visitor.
Thank you very much.
I would like to make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, to approve the contract for a judge. We have a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Motion approved. Number 7, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01007, an order of the council of the city of Nogales, Arizona, renewing the appointment of an employment agreement for city attorney. Again, we have another person that's done a great job for Nogales. He's doing a great job. As you can see, even tonight, we're going to need him here with the big companies to make sure that they don't walk over the citizens of Nogales. But aside from that, he's earning his keep. He's just been negotiating with the International Boundary and Water Commission, where he's saving the city now $500,000 a year. $500,000 a year will be saved by the city through his diligence and negotiations. And I would like to make a motion, but if there's a motion to approve his contract, which we really need him on board, but we'll open it for discussion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Then there's a motion and a second. Open for discussion. Yes, Mr. Councilman.
Mr. Mayor, again, looking at the salary comparisons for city attorney, I believe Mr. Machado is underselling his services as well. In comparison to cities up the road, he's asking for considerably less than what city attorneys going off the highway are being compensated for, and I think he's doing a great job for the city, and I guess I appreciate him offering that service for a discounted price.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, Councilman.
Yeah. You mentioned it's the same contract, but I saw two differences on two of the items. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am. The only items I cleaned up the language on it so that all the contracts would have the same language But it's the same.
It's the same.
No difference. no
Okay,
change.
and again, it's a part-time or a full-time?
No, it's a full-time. I'm expected to put in minimum 40 hours, and I think anybody here can attest, sometimes I put in much more than that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any more questions, any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to say that I know of Joe's work, Mr. Machado, and he totally has my support, and I appreciate all the work that you did with and have done with Unisource. So I really appreciate that. I'm sure that the citizens of Nogales also appreciate that as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your comments, but I also have to give credit to everybody else, the staff, Mr. Gilly, everybody has been involved with Unisource, everybody's been involved with IBWC. It's a group effort. And I'd love to take credit for it, but it's engineers have done it, Mr. Barson has.
Well, you're very humble. Thank you very much.
Well, I would, since, I guess that's pretty much that discussion, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor, approving the contract for our city attorney, Mr. Machado. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Machado.
Thank you.
We're glad that you're still here with us, and we hope that you'll bring us more money in the city in the future. Thank you. Going to number 8, consideration and possible action of order 2015-01-008.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second?
Okay, open for discussion. Well, you might like to make a little comment just so the public will know.
So this is a grant application to the Bureau of Reclamation, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The grant capacity is limited at $300,000. There is a 50% match requirement from the local agency. It can be a combination of in-kind, it can be cash. As you know, the city has, for the last several years, been aggressively trying to deal with a water meter problem, in the aging problem anyway. We've got a lot of meters that are well beyond their expected life capacity, and as a result, it affects a landslide of issues for our water department as well as our revenue. If we take strides to address by replacing these water meters, we do a lot to curtail the need to further consider rate adjustments in our water department. So when these meters are working the way they're supposed to be working, they're accurately tracking the volume of water passing through, then our rates can more accurately depict the true cost of consumption. When the meters fail, they inevitably err on the side of the consumer, not on the side of the city. In other words, the water passes through without proper reading, which requires us to consider other ways of increasing revenue, and that usually trickles down to an act of the council to increase water rates. So this grant application is in that vein, that wavelength, that thought, that if we could be successful in getting some additional monies to put towards this meter replacement program, we'll take another chunk, another chink out of that armor and be able to address the issue. There's a lot of meters out there. This grant won't cover all of them, but it certainly helps us in taking care of a bit of it. I just wanted to let you know, the match that we're proposing, $150,000 match, is coming from your 2006 bond proceeds. That same amount of money is also being leveraged as potential match monies for other grants that we're putting out there. The whole idea is that hopefully if we throw enough baskets, we're gonna score somewhere. And when we do, we'll obviously use that money to apply. Now, the question on the table is, well, what happens if you happen to score 2 baskets? Well, we'll have to make a decision at that point and unfortunately turn something down so that we can pursue something else. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I just wanted to put that on the table, make sure everybody knew kind of our strategy. We have a finite amount of money, and we're doing what we can to leverage that the best we can.
Okay, I guess the only question I have is on these meters that we're going to be purchasing, I mean, has they looked into the quality of them and everything? Are they meters that have been on the market for a while, that they're doing that kind of a great job? And
Yeah, so, you know, there are big names in the industry. I don't know if you're referring to the meter itself or our radio read component that fit on the meter. We had a bad experience with, you know, with the radio read component. The meters themselves, you know, we're getting maybe not the top of the line, but we're getting a product that we feel very comfortable with is gonna do the job for us.
yeah, so we won't have to worry about those set.
We're getting meters that we can universally adapt to another program if we decide that we can go that way down the road.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I make a motion then that we pass line 8 and get these meters that we need for the city.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Line 9, ordinances. Number 1, consideration and possible action of ordinance 02015-01-001. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Nogales, Arizona, amending Nogales City Code, Chapter 18, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Article 7, Public Transportation Service Vehicles, Sections 18-302, or 18-303 and 18-308. Require that each public transportation vehicle permit designate its terminal, to clarify that shuttles may not load or unload passengers on city streets, to remove Santa Cruz County Health Department role in determining adequacy of restroom facilities, to limit number of public transportation vehicles operating from any one transportation terminal, to limit a number of public transportation companies operating from same, and to require monthly reports of shuttles operating from each transportation terminal. I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is probably the first part, as far as unloading or passengers in city streets. I guess that's something that I would probably want to revisit down the line, maybe do a little study on that if it's all possible, even if we pass or not pass this ordinance. I think that's one of the issues that comes to my mind. And that's my question, but if it's open for discussion.
Yes, my question is, they're asking for removal of the Santa Cruz County Health Department, then who's taking over?
Go ahead.
Councilwoman, the changes that we're proposing, these are being proposed by the legal department and staff, and we've met with the Mr. Kissinger, Mr. Dilly, and the police department right now. The problem we had, to start off from the beginning, the problem we had is that the number of companies that could work out of one terminal was limited to 4. Okay? But each company was not limited in terms of how many vehicles they had. So one company could have 200 of them, and that's not what we had intended to do. We were trying to limit and regulate the number of vehicles that are out of there. So that's change number 1. We're suggesting that instead of limiting it to 4 companies, that we limit it to 25 vehicles per terminal. And regardless of how many companies, it could be 25 separate companies or lesser number, but the total numbers operating out of one terminal be limited to that number. And that's the number that we arrived at with the police department as to what's manageable and so on. And that's what's working out of there now, so we won't have a problem with getting somebody out or anything like that. The second issue that we wanted to address was we wanted to make sure that each vehicle was operating out of a terminal. So what the second suggestion is that when they come and get their license number, their license permit for the vehicle, that in the permit, it's gonna designate what terminal they're working out of. And then in connection with that, the terminal operator has to give the city a monthly report to show which vehicles are working under that terminal, so we can monitor who's working out of there and to make sure that the number of vehicles are being monitored. The other one was the adequacy of the bathroom conditions. I thought that this would be a good time to address that, because we weren't really getting the enforcement that we needed for that. And so by giving the city the authority to do it, then we can enforce it, and we can enforce it through the permits and so on. We won't permit a transportation terminal if they don't have what we consider to be adequate facilities and so on. So that's why it was taken from them, so that we can have more city control on it. The fifth one was the clarifying that they cannot load or unload passengers on city streets. That's really not a change. Our ordinance has always required that passengers unload or load or unload only at the terminals. The only reason that I wanted to clarify that is because when we were working on this, we became aware that some of these transportation terminals don't have parking areas. And they just have an office that fronts the street. And we wanted to make it real clear that if that's what you're doing, it doesn't mean that you can park on the street, unload and unload. Those that don't have a parking area on premises, they're gonna have to rent from another transportation terminal, but all that, again, is subject to the city approval, and to make sure that there's not in excess number of vehicles, that we have the adequate bathroom facilities and so on. It just gives us that control that we've been lacking on it. And I think I commented to Mr. Dilly, is that we've done a lot of work on this ordinance over the years, and each time we fine tune it, it becomes a better and better ordinance. I think everybody agrees it's a good ordinance. Doesn't mean it could be changed. If you decide, Mayor, and the council decides that you want to change it and give them the ability to unload and load like a taxi at different places, then we could do that. But my suggestion was, we need to pass this because the licenses renewals are coming up. So my suggestion was, let's do this first, and then later on, if you want to address those other issues, we can do that later.
Yes,
One quick question. How many terminals do we have here for?
You know that I couldn't tell you.
This year, last year, and we anticipate this year, 6.
6 terminals?
But it's not limited, you can have as many terminals.
How many shuttles do we have?
Last year, it was roughly 150 shuttles. This year, we anticipate the same number.
What tax does it count?
And
More or less.
taxi.
15 cab, 15 buses, 150 plus shuttles.
There you go.
Just so you know.
Yes, Councilman Lucero.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move approval of ordinance 02015-01-001.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Since there was a unanimous approval, can I have a motion to waive the second reading so it would become effective immediately?
I make a motion to waive the second reading.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Line number 10, number 1, discussion on directing staff to look at the possibility of acquiring properties. This matter will be discussed in executive session. So we'll be going to discuss it in executive session at this moment.